Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome indeed to Different Strokes 2020 virtual conference. I'm absolutely delighted that you're able to join us for this today. My name is Willett, and I am Chief Executive of Different Strokes. We're so pleased that we're able to put on this conference this week, and we have a whole programme of 10 events over the whole week, with sessions at 10 o'clock each morning and 2 o'clock each afternoon. Most of the sessions will run for 45 minutes to an hour maximum, because we've tried to do them in bite-sized chunks. Some of them might be a little bit shorter than that, but very much depends what feedback and what questions we get from people. Over the course of this week, we have a number of different types of events taking place, really as best as we can virtually, to try and replicate a conventional conference. So there will be talks from Different Strokes, talk from myself this morning, and my colleagues Joe and Lauren will be giving a talk on Friday morning. We've got a number of guest speakers lined up throughout the week, and we really appreciate them giving their time to us for this. We're really excited that on Wednesday and Thursday, we're working in conjunction with our colleagues at Chest Heart Stroke Scotland and Stroke Association Scotland to really focus on issues that are important to stroke survivors north of the border. And particularly on Wednesday this week, we've got a day that's very, very much focusing on Scotland. And we're also really pleased that we'll be closing the session on Friday afternoon this week with a panel group discussion. We've got a number of experts lined up. Again, we really appreciate the time that they've given to us on this. And we really want to focus on the next stage in people's recovery from a stroke and people looking to move forwards. I should mention that this session this morning, and indeed all of the webinar sessions that we're holding this week, are being recorded, but I must also stress that everyone who's viewing this is viewing in complete anonymity. So no details of any of the attendees will be captured or will be shown in this recording when it's available to be viewed at a later date. We do have 3 networking sessions lined up throughout the week where we really hope that people fully contribute to that and really give much more interactive feedback, but those networking sessions that we're holding will not be recorded. So please do feel free to fully take part in them. Nevertheless, it would be great to hear from you today while we're doing these webinars. So I'm not sure how familiar you are to Zoom. I'm sure that a lot of people watching use it quite a lot. Maybe some other people viewing aren't very familiar with Zoom at all. But if you hover your cursor over towards the bottom of the screen, you should see some functions there. You'll see something called chats. If you press on that, that's a great way for you to be able to give us feedback about this. So please do use the chat function, give us some feedback this morning. Perhaps as a starting point, it would be great to know where you're watching from, so please do let us know that. Please do make further comments. My colleague Lauren, who is also on the session this morning, will provide feedback on that later. There is also a Q&A function. So if you do have some specific questions, it would be great if you'd like to forward them to me this morning. We have had a couple of questions in advance of this, so thank you for them, and I'll come to them later. But as always, we'd be very, very happy to receive some more. And again, Lauren will feed those questions to me later this morning. And we're also be doing a couple of polls this morning. So please do, take part in those polls, because as always, it's great to get your feedback. 2020 has not been the year that any of us expected. But before I get to that, and before I look at what we've done in the last 6 months and what we'd also like to do going forward, I'd just like to talk a little bit about our general services. Now, I'm sure that many people watching today may have been involved and familiar with Different Strokes for a number of years. Some of you might have come to us in the past 6 months or so. Some of you may have very little previous contact with Different Strokes and know very little about our organisation. So what I'd do is I'd just like to spend a couple of minutes just talking about ourselves as an organisation and what we've historically done. We were set up in 1996 to support younger stroke survivors, and particularly working age and younger stroke survivors. One of the things we often get asked is, what age range do we support? Well, we don't specifically put an age range on that, because sometimes it's very, very difficult to define what is younger. For example, if you're a professional athlete and you're 40 years old, you're quite clearly quite old. But if you're a stroke survivor and you're 40 years old, you're clearly very young to be having a stroke. But nevertheless, we don't put a defined age range on it, but it tends to be that we support people in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, for example. Stroke affects everyone differently, and everyone who is a stroke survivor has different needs and different ways that they need support. So because of this, we try to offer support in as many different ways as possible. And I think what would be great is, Lauren, if you can just pop up the first poll now, because it would be great to get a little bit of feedback from people of the various ways that they might have received support from different strokes over the years. So if you're just able to, you know, maybe pop some answers in there. We've just put the areas up of attending the local group, online support, information pack, telephone support, children's resource pack. It would be great to see that. Thank you to everyone who attended. So just had 12 responses, which is great. And just to share these results with you now. So we can see the majority of people who are viewing this have attended our local group, have also benefited from our online support group. But what's fantastic to see is that of everything that we've put up, we've got all of them have been used in some capacity by the people who are viewing this webinar today. So thank you for that. I'd just like to talk in a little bit more detail about some of these areas where we do offer support, in case people aren't familiar with them. So first of all, we have a network of local support groups up and down the country. We have approximately 40 based in local settings. For fairly obvious reasons, they haven't been able to meet during the last 6 months. But when they do meet, they're a great opportunity for people to get together, to meet with other stroke survivors, to talk to them about what they're experiencing at the moment. And approximately 3/4 of this group also do a form of exercise in their group that aids people's ongoing physical rehabilitation. Groups tend to meet on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis, and typically they'll be based in a venue such as a community centre. Our online support group is thriving at the moment. It's now got approximately 5,600 members, and it's specifically for stroke survivors and close family members of stroke survivors. We do facilitate it centrally, but to be honest, we facilitate it in a very light touch way, because really it's just a chance for stroke survivors to be able to engage with each other, to share their successes with each other, to share their concerns, to ask advice on any specific issues. We have written materials in the forms of information packs that we're able to send out to people by post. And we also have a telephone support and advice line. We have 3 office-based supervisors in Greg, Sheila and Janice. Sorry, I shouldn't say supervisors, I should say 3 office-based stroke survivors. And they're all available to talk to other stroke survivors on the phone and talk to them about their experiences and offer that support and advice, and potentially signposting elsewhere as need be. We have a very small staff team at Different Strokes. I'm the only full-time member of staff, and then we have 6 part-time members of staff based centrally, and 2 part-time members of staff based elsewhere, one in East Anglia and one in Yorkshire. But despite the fact that we're a very small team, we're always looking at what more we can do for stroke survivors. How can we develop as an organisation? So each year, at the start of the year, we sit down and we ask ourselves, what are our priorities this year? What do we want to try and do that's above and beyond what we're already doing for stroke survivors? And this year we identified a number of areas. Firstly, at the end of 2019, we recruited 5 young stroke survivors for our teen and young adult telephone befriending service. And this was a service that we launched in February this year. The idea about this service is it's a specific phone befriending service for young stroke survivors aged 16 to 25, where they can talk on a regular basis with another stroke survivor aged from their early 20s to early 30s, and really get that one-to-one kind of personal relationship built up to hear from another young stroke survivor what they went through and to get support in that way. Another priority that we had this year was further developing our embryonic ambassador program. This was something that we started in 2019. We recruited 5 ambassadors for different strokes, and their role within their local area is to go out, is to attend relevant community events, is to talk with people in healthcare and other relevant areas, and really to try and build up knowledge within the local area of both younger stroke and the work that we do at different strokes. We had plans to hold an employability month this year. In 2019, we held a really successful sex and relationships month. And so we wanted to continue this with having themed months on an annual basis. And this year, our plan was to focus on employability and everything in that area. And last but definitely not least, we had 3 one-day conferences planned for this autumn. They were due to take place in Glasgow, in Manchester, and in Stevenage, where we were going to hold day-long events. And we were hoping and anticipating a turnout of probably 100 to 150 people at each of those events. Now, as I mentioned earlier, 2020 hasn't worked out as we planned. And of those 4 priorities, our teen and adult befriending service is working very, very well, and a huge thank you to our 5 young befrienders for the work that we're doing. But with regarding everything else and all the other priorities that we had, they've all had to be postponed. No one really expected this. Of course we didn't. I didn't expect that we would be putting the ambassador scheme on hold because our ambassadors wouldn't be able to get out and about and visit anywhere. I didn't expect that we would be running our conference by Zoom. I don't know about you, but back in January, I hadn't heard of Zoom. Now everyone seems to be using it regularly, and I seem to spend half of my days on Zoom. On a personal note, I didn't expect to be facing the challenges of balancing managing a national charity with childcare responsibilities and homeschooling, and that's been quite a challenge for myself. And we didn't expect that all our fundraising events were going to be cancelled because of simply not being able to take place at the moment, and hence overnight we'd be facing a 40% fall in income. So certainly there's been a huge amount of challenges that we've faced this year. We've always prided ourselves at Different Strokes on being very flexible and on being highly adaptable. And when faced with these challenges, the easy thing for us to do would have been to say, well, we'll cut staff right back, we'll stop all the activities that we're not able to do, we'll continue with the activities that we are able to do, but otherwise we'll just sit tight and we'll wait for life to get back to something approaching normality again. But that's never been the way that we've done things at Different Strokes. Our approach has always been to look at the circumstances we've faced and to say to ourselves, what do stroke survivors really need? And to consult with stroke survivors and to ask stroke survivors directly, how can we best support you at this time? And then consequently adapt our services to that, to what stroke survivors are telling us. So yes, we have had to make savings this year through reducing support costs. We've had to make savings through taking advantage of the government furlough scheme and temporarily cutting back on our staff. And we'll talk a little bit more about the financial impact of COVID what we're doing about that and how you can support us with that when Joe and Lauren give a presentation on Friday morning this week. But we've also introduced a range of new services this year. And Lauren, if you can pop the second poll up now, please, it would be great to hear from people about if they've taken advantage of some of these new online services that we've introduced. Thank you for that. So just to share the results with you. And again, it's absolutely fantastic to see that a number of people have taken advantage of the new services that we've introduced. So if you're not familiar with these, just to tell you a little bit more about the services that we're now doing. So first and foremost, we've introduced online daily exercise. And this is something that we do 5 mornings a week on Monday to Friday. Exercise sessions that are specifically designed for stroke survivors. And the way that we've designed our online exercises is that we have 5 different levels, starting off on Monday, which is exercise for people who have heavily restricted movement or potentially no movement down one side, and then ranging through to a Friday for stroke survivors who are close to being physically able-bodied. And the reason we do this is because we really want to ensure with stroke survivors, no matter what your physical condition might be, that there will be an exercise session throughout the week that's most appropriate for you. And we also hope there's potential here for stroke survivors that undertake this exercise with us for many months, that potentially there's the possibility for you to progress through certain tiers as your physical condition sees improvements. I must give thanks to Physio Function, an organisation we work closely with, who's been supplying us with instructors for this, and also Matt and Anthony, 2 other exercise instructors we work very closely with, and we really appreciate the support that you've all given us with these sessions on a weekly basis. And I must also thank the National Lottery COVID-19 Emergency Fund for funding these sessions until the end of 2020. We do online Tai Chi every Monday with our instructor Giles, so a big thank you to Giles. Giles is also a clinical neuropsychologist, and he'll be part of the panel for our Friday afternoon session this week. We've been having a number of guest speaker slots, and it's great to see from the poll results that the majority of people have seen some of these sessions. This is where we invite people from third-party organisations to come and talk to stroke survivors directly by giving an online presentation. We've had talks from a carers organisation. We've had a lot of talks focusing in the areas of health and well-being. But again, we're always interested to hear of specific areas that you'd like to see. So please do give us feedback if there's a specific talk that you'd like us to try and source at different strokes from a guest speaker in the future weeks and months. And what we've also had, and I noticed this was my most popular from the poll results, which is fantastic to see, we have weekly stroke survivor in lockdown videos. Traditionally, on a weekly basis, we've always released a stroke survivor story on our website so that people are able to hear direct from other stroke survivors. But what we've done over the past 4 or 5 months is we've focused more on doing these as videos. And my colleagues Janice and Sheila again, both themselves stroke survivors, have contacted other stroke survivors who'd like to share their story with us and how they've been coping with lockdown. So the videos really are just two stroke survivors having a chat with each other, but we know they've been very popular. And if you're watching today and would like to do a stroke survivor in lockdown story, we'd be really, really pleased to hear from you. So please do contact us. At Different Strokes, everything that we do is based around peer support. Our ethos is survivors supporting survivors, but this isn't just a logo or a slogan we use. This is how we work, and this is reflected in what we do day in, day out. 3 of our 8 trustees are stroke survivors, and 5 of our 9 staff are stroke survivors. So we know it's so important that we have stroke survivors absolutely at the heart of this organisation. But what we've also seen in the last 6 months is stroke survivors once again really supporting us as an organisation, and more importantly supporting each other, and this is absolutely fantastic to see. When we receive positive comments from people, either direct emails or messages via our website, when we see feedback in the comment sections of all the material that we put on Facebook, for example, or we get comments back via our Facebook group, that we're so grateful to receive all those positive comments back, and they really do give a huge boost to all of us at the charity here. But what we also see day in, day out on our Facebook group is how people are supporting each other throughout this time. And again, that's absolutely wonderful to see. So just looking ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, I think the first thing to say is it's very difficult to make plans at the moment, and whatever plans we may have are liable to change. We've seen that just in the last week or so, with movements becoming more restricted again due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we can't be certain of exactly what we'll be able to do in the next 6 to 12 months going forward. But one thing that is clear is we absolutely plan to continue definitely with the new online resources that we've introduced. I've had more than one conversation with people in the last few months that's gone along the lines of, this is working really well, why didn't we do this earlier? And certainly, that's definitely the case for the online exercise that we do. Yes, it's true to say that our online exercise and our other new online activities were introduced as a direct result of COVID-19. But having said that, they are certainly things that we know, can bring a lot of benefit to a lot of people, and we plan to continue with when life is back to something approaching normality again. Online exercise is really, really important for us to be able to provide to people. And even when we reach the point that our groups are able to meet again, there are a lot of people who are not able to get a group. They might live in an area where we don't have a local group. They might be quite isolated. It might be difficult for them to leave their home. So being able to continue with online exercise that people can continue from their home is really, really important. As I said, we do have funding in place for this to the end of 2020. I'm just in the process now of finalising arrangements to ensure that we'll be able to have funding in place until at least mid-2021. And we also have more funding applications in the pipeline to hopefully enable us to continue the online exercise beyond that. In other areas, we hope very much that we will be able to run physical conferences again next year. As I mentioned, we did have 3 planned for this year, which have had to be postponed. But it's our hope that we would be able to run the conferences again in those same venues of Glasgow, Manchester and Stevenage at some point during 2021. I am conscious this year that we haven't been able to produce our written newsletters. We normally do these twice a year in the spring and in the autumn. Unfortunately, this year we just haven't had the resources to be able to do these newsletters. But it is something that I'm aware of, and it is something that we would like to be able to kickstart when the time is right, because we do find this is a really good way that we're able to communicate with people. Finally, obviously we really hope that we're able at the appropriate time to get our fundraising events up and running again. We had to cancel our annual abseil in 2020, but we very much hope that we'll be able to do that next year. And we really want to be able to focus on having more fundraising events, you know, when we're able to. And again, Joe and Lauren will be able to provide a little bit more information about this on Friday. So thank you very much for your time this morning and for listening. And I think what would be great now is if we can bring Lauren in and see if you have any questions, Lauren.
Good morning all, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go through 2 questions that were submitted before today, and then we've got 1 question already from today, but there is time to sort of submit a question in the question and answer box. So the first question, Austin, is what is the plan for groups meeting face to face again?
I think this is exceptionally difficult to answer. At this moment in time, it's impossible to put a timescale on of when groups might be able to meet. If we go back a month or 2, there was the possibility that groups within quite strict guidelines might be able to get together. Those guidelines being first and foremost liaise very closely with the venue that you normally use, and then making sure you had a cleaning regime in place, that hand sanitizer was available, that social distancing guidelines were all in place, and that you were able to do a risk assessment as well. And there was the possibility that if groups were able to do all that, that after having a discussion with the venue that they used, that it might have been possible for them to meet again. Things have obviously tightened up considerably in the last couple of weeks, and it does look like there's going to be the further tightening of measures imminently as well. And the first of that being that, you know, no more than 6 people now are able to meet together. So realistically, this makes it quite difficult for groups to meet. And I think the situation is we're not in an environment now where we can do planning in the conventional sense. So it's not as if I can say, well, this will be the situation in 1 month's time, this will be the situation in 3 months' time. Because things are changing, you know, so quickly that making those plans are quite difficult. So at this moment in time, it's obviously not really feasible for groups to meet. But what I really would stress, if anyone from a group, is watching this, please do get in touch with me if you'd like to have a chat about it. And then we can talk in a little bit more detail about what the specific situation for your group is.
Fantastic, thank you, Austin. Another question that we had ahead of time was, as a Black stroke survivor, I've never seen Different Strokes do a Black Survivor campaign. Have you got any plans to do this in the future?
We, as an organisation at Different Strokes, we need to do more in this area, and we certainly need to be much more proactive in this area. The percentage of people from BAME communities who have a stroke at a younger age is a higher percentage from the people from BAME communities who we support through our groups, through online support group and all other methods. And we really want to address that balance. We also recognise, however, that at this moment in time, we don't necessarily have the skills, the resources for people to be effective as we really need to be in this work. So really the first stage for us is potentially looking at putting a focus group together and really consulting with people within the BAME community, and then jointly being able to come up with a plan that really effectively will increase the diversity and representation across our organisation. So if anyone is able to help us in this area, you know, we'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you so that we can really look into this much, much more.
Fantastic, thank you, Austin. This was more of a clarity question that came up. Did you say earlier on in the talk that we have seen a 40% drop in income this year?
Our income has dropped by approximately 40% on the areas from what we were expecting, yes. We have managed to mitigate part of that through being eligible for a £10,000 business grant, through monies that we've been able to bring in through the government furlough scheme, and through doing some cost reductions on kind of support costs, i.e. costs that haven't affected, you know, direct services. So we won't be facing a 40% deficit as such, but certainly it's highly likely that we will be facing a significant deficit this year.
Thank you. And then last question, but there is time to submit if you'd like to. The question is, will there be an online ambassador training event, given that it's unlikely that there will be a face-to-face event for some time?
It's not something that I've directly considered yet, but it is definitely an option. Within the next 1 to 2 months, we will be sitting down and we will be looking at what our priorities are for 2021. And certainly it could well be that's a route that we choose to go down. I think the starting point for us, though, which we'll need to give more consideration to before deciding whether we have a training event, is what role may or will ambassadors be able to do while we're still, you know, in this lockdown period, and we're still, you know, quite socially restricted. And if we feel that it is feasible that ambassadors are able to do, you know, certain activities for us that will help to promote different strengths, then we will potentially look at an online training event. But we have to consider that wider question first.
Fantastic. And I believe that is all of the questions that we've had. So thank you. I'll disappear now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lauren, and thank you everyone for your time this morning. It's been absolutely fantastic that you've all chosen to join me today. What I'd like to do is I just want to end, I'll just get some further details up on the screen to give you our contact details, and also where you're able to find more information about the conference and the other activities that you've got this week. But once again, thank you very much for your time this morning, and I hope to see you at other webinars during the course of the week.